Okay, folks, 3 problems with the ecosystem. There's a TLDR version of this video where I just described the system in about 2 minutes. I'll link that down below in the description so you can check it out if you don't have time for the full explanation. Over here, I'm going to go into more detail and explain why the system works and how it needs to be implemented to avoid problems. Let's get into it. So, the 3 problems. Problem number 1, not enough XP, Echo XP, and tuners. Problem number 2, entirely RNG progression, or power progression at least. Problem number 3, burnout as a result of problems number 1 and 2. So, how to solve these problems with one system? Use a permanent shop similar to the shops in Punishing Gray Raven, but better. In Punishing Gray Raven, you have these patch-long events that give you an event-specific currency that can be used in the event-specific material shop, and in this material shop you find all the character progression items that you need. A similar but improved concept of this system can be added to Wuthering Waves permanently. Now, the similarity being that you add the shop and it uses the special currency that can be acquired in-game. And in the shop you sell primarily Echo XP and Echo Tuners. There's zero reason to limit these 2 progression items. If Genshin Impact's gearing system has proven anything, it's that no one will ever get a 100% optimized character through a completely RNG system. In fact, that's why it becomes problem number 2 that needs to be solved. The RNG system, that we want to make sure that we're still getting somewhere, right? So we'll talk about how to acquire the currency when we solve problem number 3, but problem number 2, 100% RNG ecosystem progression, is no good. So how do we fix that? The shop should also, again, similar to PGR, have 3 special items: substat reroll, substat selector, and a substat booster. These items are exactly what they sound like. The substat reroll would just allow me to reroll the substat with a complete RNG chance of getting the right one. The selector would allow me to select the substat specifically, but RNG on the substat value. And the substat booster would just boost the substat value to the next power tier until it was maxed out. Guaranteeing progression for time invested, not solely RNG, is the simplest way to make it worthwhile to log in and play the game every day. A complete RNG system leaves it a chance if players will feel like it's worth it to keep logging in, especially when shifting from content to progression in a patch, meaning once the story and exploration is done, is it really worth it to log in every day to roll the dice completely? But no, being guaranteed that you're getting somewhere obviously is going to make it worthwhile for more people to continue logging in. Unrelated, but similar, I would also put the Calamity boss tickets into this shop, and that would be used specifically to get more boss ascension items once you've run out of chances to run for the week. It would be the ascension materials only, none of the other things that the boss drops. So that brings us to problem 3, avoiding burnout. Now, the solutions presented so far will likely motivate most players to stick with the gearing system for the long run. The important thing, however, is to balance progression for the long run so that the game doesn't get too far ahead of players. Now, it's beautiful that we'd be able to perfect our favorite characters, but the question is, how long should that take? And how can it be fun to actually do that in the first place? So the easy one first. Just like in Punishing Gray Raven, you should be able to completely perfect a character within a single patch. I mentioned PGR because I knew that as soon as I said the time frame, people would think, that's way too fast. I played PGR extremely casually and I missed many of the early patches. I play about 5 minutes a day during the week and about an hour or 2 on the weekend. And every single one of my characters has perfect gear. Despite that fact, the endgame content is still challenging for all of my teams. The true endgame modes, such as High Level Norman and Babel Tower, they're still quite challenging, no matter how perfected your gear is. In fact, they're designed around you having perfect gear. So why is that a better system than randomly having your entire player base at unpredictable power levels? Well, if the question didn't make it obvious, there's many reasons. 1, you can design one endgame for the entire player base because it's reasonable to get a character to endgame, or at least endgame capable, no matter when that person started playing. They can jump in, get a character, and get them to endgame within a patch. So you don't end up with the problem that Genshin's Abyss has right now. And honestly, Wuthering Waves equally has this problem at the moment, where most players either can't or they feel that they can't complete the endgame content because of how underpowered their teams are, or that they feel the content is trivial because their teams are just too powerful for it. And that's the problem with that really wide power gap between the entirety of the base. The new Genshin endgame suffered the results of this immediately on arrival, right? So reason number 2 is that when players aren't sure of the power requirement it takes to do the endgame modes, it inclines many of them just not to try it. Again, this happened with the Abyss and Genshin, where a lot of new players don't even try it after failing it a few times, and then hearing that it keeps getting harder, or they keep adding new enemies, they keep changing it. In their mind, they're going to think, well, it's just staying in front of me. They're not going to keep checking to see if they can get over the wall. However, a perfect character, like in PGR, lets you know that the only thing you have left to do is practice. Your character can't get any stronger, and that the game is designed around this. There's nowhere else to go but learning the skills. And so it removes a huge barrier to entry. The third reason is that systems like Leap and Harmony in PGR work exceptionally well because you know exactly how powerful the characters were when you designed these new systems to buff them and enhance their capabilities. You were able to say that, okay, if someone has this character, they have them at this power level. Now, Leap and Harmony are systems in PGR where you get new skills on older characters. And now you have new gear slots that allow for additional and varied builds. So, I mean, we just got to that on global, but that's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. But again, from the developer standpoint, they know exactly what the character was like. So when they say, okay, we want to increase their power, they have very specific numbers and they can cover for the whole base and design content exactly for it because everyone can do it. And reason number 4 is closely related to number 3, but because the gearing system is so achievable, it becomes really satisfying for the players to do it. It doesn't fill them with that sense of dread when you add a new system like the Leap or Harmony systems I just mentioned, or if they in the future add a new echo set that might buff Jian or buff Yinlin. It was enjoyable when you did it the first time, so you kind of look forward to getting to do it again. Now, when you get your account to a stable level, if you have a guaranteed progression system, it allows you to perfect the characters that you personally resonate with, and so you possibly can try alternative builds and sets. It's not only satisfying long term to be able to do that, but it can, or at least it will, allow players to make their accounts kind of unique from one another, which is always good in a game like this, where your account can show that you focused on the characters that you personally care about the most. And so it's going to be a little bit different from the next person. Everyone doesn't just have the same meta account. So finally, how to acquire the currency, how to keep it fun. The simplest method, I think, would be just giving the currency for every enemy that people defeat, right? So if you're fighting mobs on the map, you get currency for it. And then any unwanted echoes, you can trade in at the shop for more currency. And for the sake of time and variety, about almost every activity in the game, it should give some. So when you log in, you start doing your dailies, that should give you some. In fact, all the extra quests in the dailies that are left once you're finished for the day, you can do those for extra currency as well, because usually you're left with quite a few. If you're farming your holograms, you're doing the Tower of Adversity, you want to trade materials that you gathered on the map, you should be able to get currency for that. If you craft weapons, if you're cooking items, you should be able to trade all those things in the shop for currency. So basically, any way that any player enjoys spending time in the game, they should be able to use that to gain this currency and to progress their characters. For a massive audience like these games, and particularly Wuthering Waves has, it's important that we don't gatekeep people and force them into all playing the exact same way. That's an easy way to lose players for no reason. You would also set a cap like the Battle Pass, right? So you have a daily cap, you have a weekly cap for how much currency can be acquired. And that's just to make sure it's just not so exhausting. The world's going to get huge at some point. And accounting for players that just won't have the time, but would still like to keep up with the game, you can make an expedition mode where the players can send out their characters to acquire the currency at about 75 to 90% of the daily cap. And then to make sure that the players who want to play are still incentivized to do so, not just use the expedition mode, you can have the special echo items just randomly drop from anything that drops currency in the game, whether it's crafting or killing mobs or running Lucid Realm, etc. So it's just a little bit of a perk, would make manual play worthwhile. And that's the gist of it. A simple system to solve the most important problems. Definitely for me, the most important one being the value of spending time in the game after I'm done my dailies. That's really all it's missing. The advantage of a currency system, separate from the main stamina-based progression systems, figuring out if it's 40 stamina, 50 stamina, just leave that system the way it is and let people be in control of their own destiny. They can play the game and get the extra resources that they need, because all they really care about is being able to progress their characters. And that leaves the devs still in complete control of the other stamina-limited systems like Ascension and Union level. And that's really it. That's the simple system. It takes a little bit to explain the pros and the cons, but it's a really simple thing to implement. It's basically the development cost of a single event, because it really just comes down to a currency, a reward system, and all the different ways that you acquire the currency. That's it. Leave your comments and concerns down below. Share the ideas. Even if you don't share the video, let me know if you or your friends have any concerns that I didn't come up with. I really want to refine the system to account for as many players as possible, so be critical. Let me know what might be missing or I might be missing, and I'll look at it and I'll either comment about it, or I might even just make another video where I touch it up. But I really want to get this feedback to Kuro in any way, or at least get it in the community so more people are talking about the ideas and exactly what we would like to see Kuro do. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.